This is Geek Gab with your hosts, Brian, John, and me, Daddy Warpig. We are back. That's right, Geek Gab for Saturday, April 23rd, 2016. And today we have a special guest on, Bradford C. Walker, blogger. How you doing today, this Saturday, Brad?
I'm doing pretty damn good, Daddy Warpig. Nice to be here. Glad to be here.
Is it all right if I call you Brad, or should I call you Bradford?
Brad's fine.
Okay. You know, I don't like to call people the wrong name unless I'm specifically calling them the wrong name in the interests of insulting them. Which isn't yet my goal here. Let's see. We should have on the line... I'm going to let John talk first, because I know as soon as Brian starts talking, there's an announcement, a big announcement, a mega announcement that Brian needs to make, so we're going to stack him last. John, how was your weeks away from the show?
Hey, man, it's been good. I missed last week for a nerdy card tournament. There was a dozen of us who got together in Seattle to play an out-of-print card game, and we made a tournament of it. Good times were had by all. We had people coming in from Denver and Los Angeles, play Vampire the Eternal Struggle, and we had a nice tournament on Saturday, which I actually ended up winning. So I missed the Geek Gab for a good cause. You know how it is?
Congratulations on your victory.
Yeah.
So, Brian, you have an announcement I heard?
I do. Because you know how last week I said Ethereal 2nd Ed would be out on the 30th?
So, Brian, I recall that,
lied.
Yes?
Yeah, so I had some weird audio doubling there. Yeah, I lied. I couldn't wait, and a lot of people seemed to be really chomping at the bit for it to come out, and I was just sitting on it, so I'm like, fine, I'll just release it now. So it's out now. It is available on Amazon for Kindle. Although right now, if you buy the paperback version from Amazon, you'll get the old one, because I just finished the process of putting it through CreateSpace. But if you buy it through CreateSpace, and I've provided the links, you will get the second edition paperback. And I get a bigger cut than I do through Amazon anyway, so I prefer that anyhow.
Now, did you read Ben Zwicky's post?
Which one?
About Ethereal, where he mentions Ethereal? I'll tell this story anyway, because apparently you have not. Well, the International Lord of Hate, Larry Correia, author of The Son of the Black Sword, a brand new epic fantasy novel, and also author of the Grim Noir Chronicles, and Monster Hunter International, is currently on a multinational tour of Europe, including England and Czechoslovakia and France, a bunch of other countries. Well, one of the places he stopped in, he was met by a friend of ours, Ben Zwicky. I am probably pronouncing that name wrong, by the way.
Yeah, it's Zvitsky.
Zvitsky, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Ben Zvitsky. And Ben Zvitsky talked to, because Ben is also a published author, he talked to Larry Correia, the International Lord of Hate, about Ethereal. And the quote back that we got from Ben Zwitsky was that he thought it was quite a good book. So there you go. You might be able to contact the International Lord of Hate and get an official cover blurb. You know, something like, well, I didn't fall asleep more than once reading this otherwise pretty decent novel.
Yeah, thanks for that. I don't want to steal your thunder. That is really great to hear. I do have a couple more things I can say about that, because I've actually been talking to... Okay, all right, full disclosure. I've been stalking Larry for going on 3 years now. Back since I tried to approach him at Gen Con 2013, to be on Drunken Zombie, and I was a big part of the push to get him on Geek Gab. But besides that, I've been exchanging emails and Facebook posts and tweets with him. So, yeah, I'm the one who sent him his review copy of the book. And actually, he first started reading it on his way to Chattacon on the plane ride. read half of it, said, yeah, he confirmed it and said that he liked it, which is a huge honor for me. I mean, validation, of course, is never the best reason to write, but it sure is nice when you get it, especially from the International Lord of Hate himself. So his completion of the book, though, like last I'd heard, some lady suffering from a psychotic episode or demon possession or something had been seated next to him on the return flight back to Utah, and so he was unable to finish it. So I'm glad that he at least still remembers it.
Well, see, I just assumed when I heard the comment that he'd actually finished it now.
Yeah, he probably has. It seems to me that's a good indication. I do know that there will be... Oh, man. How to mention this? Let's just say that Larry isn't done with an ethereal yet, even though he's done reading it. And there will be an announcement shortly.
Ben also was pushing, he said that he told him that the second novel, that is Soul Dancer, by the way, just in case you're curious, links to Soul Dancer is in the description below. But he pushed Soul Dancer to Larry and said that it was even better than the Ethereal, so it's possible he could be reading that too at some point.
Yeah, I hope so. I also sent it to him, but I know he's got a mountain of email. I'll have to resend it now when he gets back to the States. But yeah, I'm obviously biased, but yes, I mean the readers and reviewers agree the second book is superior, and I think I avoided the sophomore jinx where the second book is almost always less well received than the first, because it's actually the first book. I wrote Soul Dancer first, then went back and wrote an ethereal to fill in the background. So the second book is really my first book, and the first is really the second.
If it's good enough for Orson Scott Card, I guess it's good enough for us, right?
Oh, did he do that? Did Uncle Orson do that?
Yeah, that was sort of Ender's Game was sort of.
Yeah.
He wanted to write Speaker for the Dead, and Ender's Game was sort of him trying to explain the backstory of Speaker for the Dead. That's how that happened. It's almost the same story.
Nice. Well, yeah, good news all around. Thank you, Jesus. Anyway, we've got a guest star here. I don't want to steal all the thunder.
I don't know. Did our guest star write a book?
It's in the process.
Oh, I love it. So that makes me the only one of us not actually writing anything. Cool.
I'm technically not writing anything.
You started, though. That's what counts.
I'm taking notes on a lot of different things.
Yeah, you're shooting Barretts and studying, the flight patterns of footed arrows. And you're doing field research. It's all right. Which is a great excuse for anything. It's like, why are you purchasing bulk quantities of 80-gallon Glad heavy-duty trash bags and bulk quantities of Drano? I'm a writer. I'm doing research. Hand me that machete. And those ski masks.
Okay, so this is my confession. I have actually, what I told Bradford, our guest star before the show, was that I hadn't done anything really that I wanted to talk about on the show, and so he suggested a couple of topics. But I want to say this. I have actually done two things that I don't really think are interesting enough to talk about on the show, but I'm going to mention them, not discuss them in depth, but just mention them. The first one of which is I am binge-watching 1970s television. I have hit WKRP in Cincinnati. I have hit episodes of Barney Miller. I have hit episodes of all kinds of One Day at a Time, Welcome Back, Kotter, Night Court, which isn't actually 70s. That's a little bit later. That's the latest one I've done. Rockford Files, and so on and so forth. And I really don't have anything that I want to talk about in respect to those because I haven't hit anything that's interesting enough to mention. Everything that I wanted to mention about them has gone out on the web, gone out on Facebook. Oh, yeah, also Fantasy Island I've watched. So the other thing I'm doing is I'm reading all the Conan stories in order of print, in order of the date of publication. and those are really, really good stories. They are surprisingly good, and it is a shame that so much of the material that was published at the same time in the pulps by other authors has dropped off the face of the planet, and I certainly hope. I'm using Jeffro Johnson is a blogger who did an entire series on Appendix N from Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, which is basically a review of 40 years, specific authors from 40 years of pulp fiction, specifically fantasy fiction, and I'm hoping to start eking through all of that at some point, because they are brilliant and very, very different from modern fantasy, because all of the rules that we've become used to that started with basically the Sword of Shannara and the other fantasies that became Tolkien-esque remixes. Not that they're bad. I loved the Elfstones of Shannara. I love the Rift Wars series, but they kind of set this heavy stamp on fantasy, and even people who are consciously rebelling against that heavy stamp, like Brandon Sanderson, still are not as wild and woolly and awesome as the Conan stories are, as Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser stories are, as all of these other pulp fantasy stories are. So I'm hoping to read more of them, because they are exciting, they are fast-paced, they are amazing, and they are quite interesting to read, and they avoid virtually all of the what we would consider cliches from modern fantasy. The story I'm reading right now, the beasts Conan is running into aren't dragons or goblins or trolls or things. They're dark, mysterious, grotesque, semi-shapeless monsters that would not have been out of place in a Call of Cthulhu story. So it's very, very interesting. Those are the two things I've been doing, and other than that little bit of talking about them, I don't really have much to say yet. Maybe I will at some future show when I get more of that under my belt. So I am going to go to Bradford, to Brad, and because he made a couple of suggestions for things we could talk about in our typical rambling, discursive manner. And I was going to give him a chance to introduce them.
Yeah, thank you, Daddy Warpig. Now, before I do that, a little follow-up. I do have all of the Del Rey reprints for the original Conan Corpus and the rest of the stuff that Howard published through the pulps. And you are correct. It is fantastic writing. It has significantly influenced my own, to the point where I made my own barbarian character and then took him out of the barbarian, standard fantasy stuff and made him post-apocalyptic, which is, he's going to be the protagonist of the novel I'm currently working on, The Burning of Hugo. So when I'm ready to talk more about that, I'll be certain to find my way to you guys and come back and hype the book. And in the meantime, while I work on Burning of Hugo, I also spend a lot of time online in other communities. When I'm not playing World of Warcraft, I will be often found on Twitch, and some of the other people that I met by way of Gamergate, one of which is Oliver B. Campbell. He has a channel on Twitch, and he has...
I want to interrupt you. I am so sorry. I was reading your blog. I don't play World of Warcraft. I don't think Brian does, but I believe John still does. And while we're passing peripherally by the topic of World of Warcraft, one of the posts that went up recently on your blog was about the disaster that is hovering into view with the next expansion.
Oh, good God, the Legion release date.
You want to talk about that for a few minutes?
Yeah. Over the past week, Blizzard Entertainment, the World of Warcraft development team particularly, released the date in which the next World of Warcraft expansion, Legion, is going to go live, and that's August 30th this year. And the reason I'm on the doomsaying side of this is twofold. One, I was in the beta for the current expansion, Warlords of Draenor, and a lot of the feedback I gave was not heeded and turned out to be part of a chorus of feedback that told the developers at the time what a lot of the problems were, problems that are now known issues that have driven off over half of the subscription base. And now that Legion has been in development for a better part of a year, openly so, the official status is still alpha. We're not officially in beta yet, and yet they want the expansion to go live in August 30th. That's not very far. And the next thing to consider is that standard practice for going into the next expansion is that there is something called the pre-patch, where all of the major mechanical updates and code updates and technical updates are pushed out, usually 4 to 8 weeks, usually about a month and a half before the expansion goes live, so everybody can get used to them. And there's usually an end of expansion event, blah blah blah, segue stuff. That's likely to happen in June, around the time of the release of the Warcraft movie. And if they think that this expansion is going to launch without much of a problem, there's going to be a disappointment, because while Warlords of Draenor for the first 2 weeks was fantastic, as soon as everybody hit the new level cap and started getting into the end game, it quickly dawned on a lot of us that there really wasn't much to do if you were not a raider. And that's when the tanking started. Legion is really starting to look like it's going to have a similar problem, not the same problem. In the last day or two, there's been a lot of information released on how they're trying to address this by importing the adventure mode concept from Diablo 3 and make that part of the initial round of endgame, where your max level character starts gearing up and preparing to do the high-end raiding, high-end dungeons, player versus player stuff, all of that. If it works, fantastic. I've been on this ride for a decade. I've come to understand that the developers' ambitions far exceed their abilities. So I want to believe. Let's put it that way.
So, I mean, what's the that's really interesting and saddening to hear. And like Jasyn was saying, I don't currently play, but I played for years and years, and the big MMO problem is the content problem. Do you really think it matters how smooth the expansion release is and everything? When, in my opinion, the main problem ever since, even as far back as Wrath of the Lich King, is that they simply can't put out content fast enough for people to consume it. So,
yeah, that is the primary problem. It's the locust swarm problem. It's why you have a lot of people who will, play for a month, 2 months until they hit the end, and then they'll unsubscribe for the next content patch. Up through the current expansion, that was acceptable because, especially in Mists of Pandaria, they managed to come up with a pretty decent pace of content release, and Warlord screwed all of that up. They really had exactly one real content patch, and that was 6.2, the release of Hellfire Citadel and Tanan Jungle finally being available for play, which, by the way, should have been in at launch, but wasn't. A lot, amongst many other things that were supposed to be there, but got cut or delayed. And with the upcoming expansion with Legion, they just made the final zone of the new content area available. They just made one of the dungeons that are supposed to be available at launch open for testing. They still haven't finished raid testing. The higher level dungeon stuff is still being tuned. Most of the classes and specializations still need a tuning pass and a balance pass, and PvP is still under significant testing. And again, we are not officially in a beta state yet. while it often looks like one, that's, what it looks like and what it officially is are not the same thing, and that's causing a little strife that's noticeable, at least for folks like me, when interacting with people who live stream their testing, which is completely open to do. There's no NDA for this, and it is causing some concern, and those concerns are starting to show up in the YouTube video feeds of people I follow, like Final Boss TV, Belloar Gaming, Asmongold, and a few others. Breach Gaming, Heels versus Babyface. Those are the folks I routinely check to see what their opinions are about Legion and how they get to what their opinions are. And all of them are having concerns of one sort or another because of the short amount of time between the release of Legion, when it's supposed to go live, when we expect the pre-patch, and today. It's like we're near the end of April. If we expect the pre-patch roughly about June, roughly about the same time, that doesn't leave a whole lot of time for any kind of beta testing, especially any massive stress testing, where you not only have people checking this technical stuff, but you're trying to load the servers as hard as you can, and get them to fail so that they can find the failure points, fix them, and supposedly have everything ready to go for launch. Otherwise, you're going to have problems like what happened when Warlords of Dorrinal launched, and at first everybody thought it was a DDoS attack. It just turned out there was twice as many people coming back as they expected.
So the problems with it being in an alpha state right now, or being rushed out in August, is that, one, there are significant game mechanical problems that need to be tested and addressed, and two, that it just isn't going to be enough for people to do once they buy this expansion pack, because it's a paid expansion pack. All of them are. There just isn't going to be enough for people to do to remain interested in it and continue subscribed to World of Warcraft.
Yeah, it may not seem like, for people who are keeping up and are watching the live streams or the archive videos, of the Legion testing, it may not seem like there are a whole lot of issues, but you go to places like the official World of Warcraft forums, you go to the MMO or champion forums for Legion testing, and you read feedback, and once you filter out the flame wars and the shit posting, there are significant issues that are still cropping up. They may not appear, when you're looking at the screen, they may not seem weird. They may seem like a bug, but behind the scenes, when you're looking at the math and the code, you're seeing issues where, at this point, it's a lot of things are not working as intended, and whether or not they can make things work as intended for all 36 class specializations that are going to be in the game at launch, well, that's a big task, and if Blizzard can pull it off, great. Otherwise, well, what's usually going to happen is that there's going to be a bunch of bugs that either didn't get fixed but were reported or weren't even noticed. They go live, people complain, they manage to get enough useful information from the complaints to figure out what happened, and then they have to start doing minor patches and bug fixes and push those out. And that's been the case. That's been the case to some degree or another since World of Warcraft first went live, over 10 years ago.
Okay, well, something to keep in mind if you're a World of Warcraft fan, if you are either a current player or if you were planning on returning in August, or even if you weren't planning on returning, if the going and seeing the movie gets you all excited about playing World of Warcraft again, you know who I'm talking about, because it will happen to you. keep in mind that the new expansion might not be something you want to jump into right away. You might want to wait a couple of months for some of the balance issues to get ironed out, and maybe even for some additional content to come out. Okay, so the other thing you wanted to talk about was, and you started to talk about before I rudely interrupted, was Oliver Campbell's Twitch channel.
Yes.
We only have 4 or 5 minutes left, so.
Okay, then I'll cut straight to the chase. Oliver B. Campbell is one of the best people I've met by way of Gamergate. He, when he's not talking journalism, journalistic ethics, and the like, he wants to get his game on just as much as the rest of us. And he has a channel, OBC TV, at Twitch. And right now he's probably still streaming Dark Souls 3 for doing his 4th playthrough. But he started using his stream to not only just build a regular community of regulars, such as myself, who show up and talk not with everyone else and him while playing. He started doing 2 things that I think are very interesting. One, he's allowing other people to use his channel periodically to stream, and that just happened the other night. Somebody, I forget exactly who it was, but one of the others that Oliver would allow to do this, did The Sims 4 for a while. And the big one, the one that's really gotten me excited, is that he started putting together Thursday night fights, which is him and a bunch of other people playing one of a set of fighting games, Guilty Gear, Street Fighter 5, whatever. And the way that's organized is he sets up his stream, and then he opens up he has a Discord server that he invites people to, and he has a voice channel in there that's where all the fighters are, and that's how they organize who's going into the fight rotation, who's taking on whom, et cetera, and that's been a lot of fun because some of the other people who also, who I also encountered by way of Gamergate are starting to show up, and they're good. Oliver's good. Some of the people he's invited are really good, as in you should go to Evo and play professionally good. If you want to show up and hang out and meet some wonderful people, go to Oliver's channel. I see it's linked in the chat. So, stop by and join the Goof Troop. That's pretty much, that's what Oliver calls it.
I love it. I've actually jumped in a couple of times and watched his stream, and here's what I noticed. My takeaway is that aside from the Thursday night fights, he plays boring ass games. This guy. I mean, he started recently playing Enter the Gungeon, right? But it's not about that, right? Like, when he's not playing Enter the Gungeon and stuff, it's all like JRPG. He's like Menu the video game, right? But he's always in there talking about the latest bullshit Twitter drama or journalism or stuff, and he's every Twitch streamer, every successful one has to interact with his audience, but I think the stuff he says is really interesting. It's sort of like it's the long form version of the tweets that you see coming out of this guy.
Yeah, follow him on Twitter too if you're not already. He's worth it.
By the way, I put the link to Oliver Campbell's Twitch channel in the liner notes in the description. So go down, click on Show More on the description, and you'll have a link to Bradford's his blog, and right under that, Oliver Campbell's Twitch channel. Both those links are in the description right now. Well, I just killed the entire conversation. Bam! That was it. One little announcement, it's over, which is fine. We only have like a minute left, so I'll let Bradford. Any last words before we go?
In addition to Oliver Campbell, Razorfist is somebody else you should follow. You should check out. He's if you're into metal, if you're into video games, if you're into of pop, various levels of pop culture that intersect with one or both. He's your man. You can find him at YouTube. Sometimes he streams. Unfortunately, not often enough at Twitch. He also does YouTube gaming streams. Why, I don't know. And anybody who wants to follow, me, well, my primary blog will be linked below. On Fridays, I also post from my blog that is specifically about writing and the writing business. That's where I'm talking about anything that's work in progress, anything about writing and publishing that I think is worth throwing out there.
It's good stuff, folks. I can vouch for it. Check it out.
Yeah, the primary blog is Walker's Retreat. The writing blog is Walker's Study, and on Sundays, I'm still cleaning up and revising my politics and philosophy blog, which is Empires Must Fall.
Okay, let's go to Brian. Do you have any final words before we take off?
Yes, I do. I want to thank Bradford for coming as one of the people who's been paramount in supporting my writing career, both just signal boosting and giving feedback, and sometimes gentle correction when I need it. My hat is off to you, sir. You are welcome here and certainly on my blog anytime. And stick around. The ride is just beginning. Stay tuned.
John?
I'm glad to be back on the Gab. Thanks for coming on, Brad. It's good to have you on this side. Thanks, Teddy Warpig, for doing this, and everybody for listening. It's been good times.
All right, folks. This has been Geek Gab for Saturday, April 23rd, 2016. Thanks for tuning in. I have no idea what it is we're going to do next week, but I wish to assure you we will be back.